Good evening, everyone. Happy Halloween or Happy Samhain, whichever you celebrate. The American tradition of Halloween and traditions of Halloween all over the world are a melting pot. Not a mixed salad, but a melting pot of traditions coming together and molding. So the original celebrations have evolved and changed and has adopted the traditions of other customs and has evolved into what we celebrate today. Trick or treat is only about 80 years old. So, for only about 80 years, children have been going out with their candies, or going out with their bags and trick or treating for candy. Trick or treating is an old tradition in England and Ireland where vandals would go out and would take donations or money or little soul cakes and offer up prayers for the dead people who have died in the past year. So it was either a payment or an extortion, and and they would do that on what was called All Souls Day, which is November 2nd. And so trick or treating grew out of that tradition. Also, in the early part of the 20th century, a lot of children or young people were going out and committing acts of vandalism. Halloween or Samhain is a celebration or a tradition that thrives on trust. And I think that's very important to think about. This holiday really is about trust, trusting your neighbors. In the early part of the 20th century, there were children or young people who would go out. They would vandalize people's homes. They would literally put up structures of junk on the roofs of people's houses. They would remove the steps from the house, so when people would step out, they would fall down and injure themselves. They would put soap on the railways of the trolley cars to cause the cars to derail, and people were hurt. And in New York City in the 1930s, some vandals went out and broke out all of the windows in a school. And what people decided to do is they thought, well, what if we offered a reward, give them a treat, bake them goodies, and in exchange they won't TP my house or create other problems. And so that's where trick or treating really took off here in America through the years. And so that's the tradition of trick or treating, a tradition of extorting or paying extortion to young tricksters in exchange for not vandalizing your property. You would give them baked goods, little soul cakes, little cakes. Eventually, people were not cooking anymore and were giving out little candies, and the candy corporations snatched that idea up, and now we have candy. So this is a time of year that candy companies, of course, make a lot of money. Of course, you go tomorrow, you'll have a lot of candy on sale. But Halloween or Samhain is about 3,000 years old. It predates Christianity and celebrated in Ireland by the Celts and the Druids. And really what it is, it's to celebrate the end of the harvest. You brought in your harvest, you're entering into a time that's scary and uncertain for people that lived in an agricultural society. And they would slaughter the animals that they would have to store up for their food. And they would build bonfires and they would burn the bones of the animals as a giving thanks to the gods, and in hopes that the sun would return again as the days are getting shorter. And the bonfires are also believed to be blood sacrifices to the gods. They would sacrifice cows and horses and other animals on the fire. They'd pray for the return of the sun. The Druids would read the burnt entrails of the animals like tea leaves. And then the villagers would go around and spread these little fortunes around all throughout the night. And we think that's where the tradition of ghost stories come from, and the telling of ghost stories, and the tradition of the fortune tellers out on Halloween and telling each other's fortune. This is a party game that we see going on through the centuries, is being able to, having parties where people are playing divination games. It's also the time of year that is thought to be, Halloween night is thought to be, or Samhain night is thought to be the thinnest veil between the living and the dead. And a lot of traditions celebrate the people who have passed away in the past year. So again, offering them, little baked goods. Some traditions would pour milk on the people's graves to keep them in their graves. And, not every spirit was friendly. And so again, you had to offer food and sweets and apples and nuts to keep those spirits happy with you. And at the same time, Samhain is being celebrated. And Samhain, by the way, is a Gaelic word. And I had to actually write it down. It's a Gaelic word. It actually means November. So, and it's the transition between summer and winter. At the same time that the Irish are celebrating Samhain, Rome, in Rome, they're celebrating the goddess Pomona. And Pomona is the goddess of gardens and fruits. And so there's a festival that they would hold on November 1st. So you're seeing how these dates are very close together. And they would give her apples and nuts laid out, and they would bob for apples. And, around 50 BC, the Roman Empire starts to conquer Europe. And that's when you see Samhain and the festival of Pomona starting to merge into one. And, Christianity, and you see it today, Christians today see Halloween. I have one person on YouTube I follow, very Christian. I don't care. I don't care what people worship. But he talks about how Halloween, he's always thought Halloween is very demonic. And that goes very much hand in hand with the way Christianity has always seen these pagan holidays. The gods and goddesses of the natural world are now demonic, and it's now demonic to worship them as Christianity is coming into the picture and starting to spread. And Pope Gregory I, at about 600 AD, he's slowly taking over and usurping the pagan symbols and adopting them as Christian symbols to sort of trick the people, turning them away from their pagan traditions and getting them to follow into the Christian traditions. But by Pope Gregory III in about the 8th century, that patience has been given up, and he challenged Samhain head on. He created the holiday on November 1st, All Saints Day, to celebrate all of the saints who did not have a day that was celebrated for them. So that takes place on November 1st. And then Pope Gregory VIII created All Saints Day and All Hallows Day. Now, All Saints Day and All Hallows Day, of course, the day before All Hallows Day, of course, is the eve, All Hallows Eve. The eve of All Hallows Eve, which is where we get the word Halloween from, is from All Hallows Eve. Again, All Saints Day, November 2nd, All Souls Day, where the Christians go and pray for everyone who has died in the past year. Again, taking in those pagan traditions, usurping them, using them for their own means to try and convert people. Now, people were still dressing up and giving offerings, and But Pope Gregory VIII forbid the use of the word Halloween. Or, I'm sorry, he forbid the use of the word Samhain. I'm sorry, and then in the 10th century, not Pope Gregory III, or the 8th, but in the 10th century is when All Souls Day is enacted to remember everyone who had died in the past year. And in about the 10th century, that's when you start to see witches becoming suspect and the word witches coming out. And witch is a word that means wise woman or wise one. And so it wouldn't surprise you that a lot of the women who were accused of being witches were midwives and people who had wisdom of sacred herbs, and women who were widowed or single, because it's really the unruly feminine powers. And in Christianity, you have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. This is the boys' club. There's no room for women. So having a tradition that celebrates, feminine power is really taboo to the Christians, which is why naturally witches would be taboo in the old world, you might say. And 1486 is when you see Pope Innocent VIII. He writes a book linking witches forever with the devil and with demons. And he outlawed the pagan religions. I'm seeing that there's a lot of popes enacting laws, not kings. Anyway. And of course, you get the image of the black cat. The black cat, cats associate them, are usually around women. They're mysterious. You never know quite what a cat is thinking. They do what they want to do. And they're usually the companions of women who are unmarried. They lay around the hearth and the fire. And so the black cat becomes the mascot of the witch. And this is my black cat, Morticia. So you'll see her in other videos if you watch my other videos. The same thing with bats and with owls. Again, going back to the tradition of the bonfires when they're making the animal offerings. Mosquitoes and insects are attracted to the firelight and the smoke, and the bats and the owls are coming and eating the insects. And that's about the only time you would see these nocturnal creatures, owls, cats, bats, is in the evening. And so again, their nocturnal nature makes them suspect to Christianity, to Christians at that time. And if we go to, say, Mexico is also a Catholic country, but they also have Indian traditions. And Mexico's Day of the Dead is a day to celebrate the dead. It's actually celebrated on November 1st, not October 31st. Again, another day very close. And they make altars in their houses for dead loved ones who have passed away, or they go out to the cemetery, to the grave, and they offer food and cakes and light candles, and they visit with their loved ones. It's like their loved ones haven't passed away. And you see the images of skeletons and skulls being made into little pastries and little cookies that are put into offering. And it's a day to commune with those who have passed away, to recognize that they're not very far from us. So Day of the Dead celebrations, dances, parades. It's a day to celebrate your ancestors. I don't think that's demonic at all. I think that's very beautiful to celebrate your ancestors, to celebrate and remember those who have passed away. I think this country has had is now in a tradition where we're so removed from death that even if they think it's morbid. It's once someone passes away, you deal with the funeral, you deal with whether they're going to be buried or cremated. You bury them, you put them in the ground, you cremate them, you scatter them, whatever you do, and then you forget about them. They're gone. And I think that's a real shame, because it's like when somebody dies, you're throwing them away. And in these cultures, they're actually celebrating and remembering those loved ones. And I think that that's something that's very important, that definitely in America, we've lost that. Once someone dies, we have to grieve them because they're gone forever. And we're only allowed to remember them every once in a while, but not have a specific time of year or day to remember them. And I think that's what makes the holidays very, very difficult for a lot of people in this country. I'm going on 16 minutes, so I'm going to have to split this video up. So this is part 1. I'm going to make part 2 right after this, and I'm going to start with the Guy Fawkes traditions and how that contributes to the Halloween that we know today. So I'm out in 3, 2, 1.